We also talked about adjectives to live by. And it's hard for me to explain this to you without giving you the exact example I gave to your students today. I was on a flight about 3 weeks ago, and as I was on my flight, I glanced over at the woman next to me, and about 2 hours in, as I was flying over to Rhode Island, I noticed that she was crying. I handed her the napkin they typically give you with soda or ginger ale, and hoping she could wipe away some of her tears. After she did, she turned towards me, thanked me, and began sharing her story. And if you have ever been in that situation where somebody, even a complete stranger, is sharing a story with you, especially if you're in a flight and you can't move seats because you didn't fly Southwest, you can't help but sit and listen. And so I sat and listened, and as I was told, 4 of her family members in the past year, unfortunately, had passed away. Her uncle, both of her brothers, and her cousin. And she continued to tell me about each one of them individually. She told me about her uncle and how he was a father figure in her life, both of her brothers, and how they would go on vacation every single summer together, and how that would no longer be an option. And then finally, she told me about her cousin. And as she told me, her cousin lived a very independent solo life. He lived a different state. He lived alone, didn't have any kids, never got married, worked from home. He lived a very independent life. And she'd only met him a handful of times, which is why she was so surprised when she got the call asking for her to plan his funeral. So like any family member would, she flew out and began with 4 other family members to plan his funeral and write his eulogy and all that stuff. And as she found out, though, every single one of the other individuals, 5 of them collectively, had one thing in common, and that was that every single one of them had only had a few real interactions with him, which meant they had quite the problem. They had to figure out how to remember him using only these select few experiences. And so the system they came up with is every single individual, all 5 of them, were able to select one word, one adjective, a descriptive word, to describe him based on their interaction with him. Again, every single person was allowed to select one word, and then based on those 5 words, those would be the 5 words they used at his funeral. It would be the 5 words they focused on in his eulogy, and they would be the 5 words written on his tombstone. And it blew my mind to think about, because everything this man was, everything he had accomplished in life, everything he had strived for, was summed up in a matter of 5 words. And my reason for telling you this story in the same manner that my reason for telling your students this story is not to have you reflect on your own life and think like, what have I done? But more importantly, to ask a question in regards to the future, and that's, what will you be known for? If I were to say, have your students stay here, if I were to go back to their school, they were to stay on this campus tomorrow, and I were to ask students back at their school to describe them in 5 words, would those words be helpful or would they be hurtful? Would they be positive or would they be negative? And unfortunately, when you ask that question to students, and even when you begin to reflect it in your own life, oftentimes the response is, well, maybe 2 would be positive and 3 would be negative, or maybe depending on the person you talk to, 3, 4, or even 5 could be negative. But the power of post-secondary education, of making healthy decisions, of actually taking initiative, being that catalyst, is you have the ability through your actions to redefine the words that are used. Because I firmly believe that in every person's life, mine included, I'm completely guilty of this. There are 2 very distinctly different lines. There's the line of things that we want to be known for, the things that we want to strive for, the things at the end of our lives that we think would matter to us. And then I think oftentimes far away from that, there's the things that we're known for now. And so the question becomes the students, and it's the same question I'll ask you: how are we going to fill the gap? What steps are we willing to take? What risks are we willing to take to fill that gap? And I think that's a great question for your students, because they have to be willing to figure out what steps they're going to take to create their own identity. And I think for parents, I think the same steps are required to decide how you want your son or daughter to turn out. What choices they're going to make based on how you decided to help them or to assist them, the parent that you decided to be. And so like I said, we talked about the adjectives to live by. And finally, we talked about using what you love to fuel what you learn. I think every single student has passions. I think every single student has things that they love to do, things that if they were to wake up every single day, they could do just for fun. I have plenty of them, Xbox being one of them. But if a student can find something they love, or any person for that matter, and those of you who have careers that you love, you know this to be true. If you can find something you love so much that you never have to wake up and call it a job, but then use that thing to solve the things in your world that you think are unjust, I think it's pretty safe to say that you can call what you do fulfilling. Become so good at what you love that people are willing to pay you for it, but at the same time use that thing to help others around you. And that all involves making healthy choices. It all involves doing something greater with that passion that others aren't willing to do. Because everybody can, for example, like Xbox, it takes a very select group of people to actually design the next system, or to design the next game, or to test the next game. That takes initiative. And so again, we were talking about using what you love to solve what you don't. Tonight's question, though, as far as I interpreted it, was how do I get my child equipped and prepared for the future? And the two key words being equipped and prepared. Like I said, I wish I could entertain and make us laugh a lot tonight. My goal, more importantly, is really to help. And I think there's a few ways that we do that, and that's at school, online, and from home. And I think it's first important to talk about what we're doing at school. So I wanted to do a quick activity. If you can, and I will give you guys about 30 seconds to do so. Simply at your table, you might be at the table with all people you know, you might be at the table with different people who you know. My question would be in the next, actually I'll give you a minute, the next minute to a minute and a half, to talk with those people and try to make a mental list of every single activity that your son or daughter is in, not counting going to class every single day. Every single activity they are in. Go. Okay, I know I didn't give you too much time, but if you guys could, because I would love to hear a few of these, just raise your hand and maybe shout out 2 or 3 of them. That way we can kind of get overall as a group a quick mental count. Anybody have? Football, fantastic. So, what we have?
Soccer.
Soccer, great. We have sports. We'll count sports as an entire category.
Marching band.
Marching band, fantastic.
ROTC.
ROTC? I heard something in the back.
Spanish club.
Spanish club, awesome. What else?
Horses, animals, horses.
Okay.
Horseback riding.
Anything livestock related?
Job.
A job? Anything else? So here's what I ask. I have a number of friends who I work with, part of what is called the Alliance for Student Activities. And this is a group that I work very, very closely with, that does work all around the country. They started a campaign about 5 years ago to answer a really important question, and that's how can we get students engaged? That was the very broad question. The more specific questions were, how can we keep students from dropping out? How can we keep students connected? And how can we keep students healthy? And what they found out was really interesting, and that was that student activities, being co-curricular and extracurricular activities, had a really profound impact on the way that students viewed school.